Something happened out there, far beyond the maps, beyond what your phone signal could ever reach, beyond what we think we know about this planet. An island that doesn't appear on satellite images, a place whispered about by only a handful of people who've lived long enough to remember things others have forgotten. And on that island, there's someone or something living alone, watching, waiting. But here's the real twist. He's not just surviving. He's thriving in ways that defy science, evolution, and human understanding. Today, we're pulling you deep into a mystery that starts with one unbelievable question. What if there's a real superhuman walking among us, but he's been hiding in plain sight, untouched by the modern world? Stay with me, because by the end of this video, I promise, you'll know exactly what was found out there. But you might wish you didn't. Before we go further, I want you to pause everything else for just a second. No distractions, no second screen, no quick scrolling. Because what you're about to hear will challenge your reality in ways you never saw coming. This isn't just a story, it's a revelation. And the reason you clicked on this video, you're going to get your answer. That unsettling magnetic curiosity that pulled you in, we're going to chase it to the very end. This isn't clickbait. This is a real deal. But fair warning, once you know, there's no going back. So make sure you're here for every second, because if you miss even a moment, you might miss everything. Now, I'm not asking for your trust. Not yet. All I'm asking is for your attention, because I think deep down you already feel it, that this is more than just another island mystery or conspiracy video. This hits on something primal, something ancient. It taps into that part of you that wonders what else is out there, what else is possible. And if you've ever looked up at the sky or into the sea and felt like there was something just beyond your understanding, you're not alone. This video is for you. For the thinkers, the seekers, the skeptics, and the believers. And by the time we're done, you won't be asking, is this true? You'll be asking, why didn't we know about this before? So let's rewind. A few months ago, a group of freelance researchers, explorers, really, set out on a mission that was meant to last 2 weeks. They were mapping geological anomalies in the South Pacific, chasing rumors of an undocumented landmass. It was a side project, almost a joke among their colleagues. But then the signal went dark. No communication, no distress call, no GPS coordinates. Just silence. Until, exactly 17 days later, a single drone returned to their base camp, damaged but intact. What was on its memory card changed everything. There were videos, strange ones, of structures made from materials unknown to any science lab, of wildlife behaving in impossible ways. But the final clip? That's where the mystery begins. A tall figure, standing on a cliff, backlit by the sun, watching the drone as if he knew what it was. And as the drone drifted closer, the figure vanished. No movement, no noise, just gone. Let me be clear. This isn't some myth told around a campfire. This isn't fiction. The footage has been examined by analysts, verified by digital forensics experts, and none of them can explain what they're seeing. Which brings us here, to this video. Because the more we dug, the deeper it got. And the deeper it got, the more it pointed to one terrifyingly fascinating idea. There's someone out there who isn't just human. He's more. And he's been alone for decades, maybe centuries, evolving differently, untouched by the rules we know. How is that possible? That's what we're going to uncover together. Now, let's stop for a second and talk, you and me. Because I want you to feel this journey, not just hear it. I want this story to sit with you, to tug at your thoughts at 2 a.m. when everything's quiet and your mind starts wondering, what if it's true? If you're the kind of person who's tired of surface-level stories and needs something deeper, something that pushes the edge of truth and reality, you're in the right place. And I promise you won't feel alone here. This story will grip you. It'll make you question things. It'll give you goosebumps. And it might even scare you. But that's what makes it real. That's what makes it unforgettable. Let's talk about what makes someone superhuman. It's not just strength or speed. It's perception, adaptability, control over the body and mind in ways science can't explain. And this island figure, he's displaying all of it. In the clips we've analyzed, he moves with unnatural precision, He blends into environments like a chameleon, seems to predict the drone's path, reacts to stimuli faster than any documented human capability. His environment, lush, hostile, unpredictable, seems to bend around him. It's like nature doesn't just accept him, it protects him. And we're going to show you why. As we break down what happened after that drone returned, how an elite team was sent to investigate, how strange signals started disrupting naval frequencies, how one member of the crew came back with changes in their physiology, you'll start to see the pieces fall into place. You'll meet people who've seen things they'll never unsee. You'll hear audio that's been kept classified until now. And you'll start to realize this isn't just one man. This might be an entire species, or a branch of humanity we thought died out or never existed at all. The conflict? It's not just about discovery. It's about containment. There are forces, powerful ones, that don't want this getting out. YouTube might not be where you'd expect to learn about a secret like this, but that's exactly why I'm telling it here. No mainstream media interference. No edits. Just the truth, raw and uncomfortable. Because this isn't a documentary. It's a warning. And once you see what we found, you'll understand why some stories stay buried. Why some knowledge is locked away. But not today. So, who is this being? Where did he come from? Why does the island reject technology, yet seem perfectly in sync with him? Why is the military now involved? Why are satellite records being scrubbed? Why have scientists gone missing after reviewing the drone footage? We're going to cover all of it. But you have to commit to watching this till the very end. Because every detail connects. Every minute builds on the next. And right when you think you figured it out, I promise you, everything will change. The final act will flip this entire story upside down. So don't skip. Don't fast forward. This is one of those stories where the truth reveals itself slowly. But when it hits hard. And as we go deeper, I'll introduce you to some key people. A former Navy signal specialist who intercepted strange transmissions coming from coordinates that don't exist. A botanist who identified species of plant from the island that seemed to reverse cell aging. A linguist who broke down symbols found etched into the cliffside of the island. Symbols that match no known language, but seem to carry patterns linked to neurocognition. Their stories weave into this narrative like threads of a much larger fabric, one that's been unfolding for far longer than we ever realized. And then there's him, the one they call the Quiet One, the being at the center of all of this. We don't know his real name. We don't know if he even has one. But what we do know, he's watching. He's aware. And some say he's learning from us. I'm going to show you how. But just as we started connecting the dots, just as things were beginning to make a strange kind of sense, something else happened. Something that changed everything we thought we knew about the island, the being, and even the mission itself. Something that none of us were prepared for. And that's where it gets dark. And that's where we pick up right after this. The drone footage, the mysterious figure, and the impossible events captured during those fleeting moments weren't just an anomaly. They marked the beginning of something much larger. As I sit here, typing these words, I can't help but reflect on how this all began and how, with every new detail uncovered, we inch closer to the truth. But like any story of discovery, the closer we get, the more tangled the web becomes. There's a reason no one has dared to fully investigate what's happening on that island. A reason people are willing to risk everything to keep this story buried. And a reason that, no matter what we learn, the journey is far from over. But to understand where we are now, you have to understand where it all started. It began with a simple expedition, a group of researchers who were supposed to be mapping the unexplored reaches of the South Pacific. A quiet project for a small team of freelance explorers looking for a bit of fame, a dash of notoriety. No one had ever suspected that their discovery would set off a chain of events so profound that it would ripple through governments, military organizations, and scientific communities all over the world. Their mission was clear: document any anomalies, capture video footage, and return with new data for their sponsors. But no one expected what they would uncover. And the moment the drone footage came back, it was as if the world had just been tilted off its axis. When the footage first landed back in the hands of the research team, it was nothing short of a revelation. They had just been conducting routine checks on some of the most remote, uncharted waters on Earth when something caught their eye. At first, It was only a brief flash, no more than a few seconds, but when they replayed the footage, something caught their breath. The figure was standing on the island's cliffside, a tall silhouette barely visible against the setting sun. The fact that they could even see a figure out there at all was strange. The island was supposed to be uninhabited, its waters treacherous, its air dense with an almost unnatural fog that blocked any human settlement from surviving. The drone's infrared sensors couldn't detect any heat signatures, and yet there he was, a human, or something like one, watching them from the shadows. But here's the catch. This wasn't just a man. The way the figure moved was unnatural, too fluid, too precise. His motion seemed to defy gravity, as though the very air around him was obeying some unknown force. The researchers knew it couldn't be just some person stranded or isolated. This wasn't a mere survivalist. There was something else at play, something that no one could predict it. They thought they had stumbled upon a living legend, but no one was prepared for what came next. The team sent out their best people to the island, a small, highly trained crew of experts, each with a unique background that could bring clarity to the mystery. There was Raj, a communications expert who could break down any transmission, Maya, an environmental scientist who specialized in rare ecosystems, and Jonah, a seasoned survivalist and former military scout. The group was skeptical but eager, thinking it would be a simple retrieval operation. They were wrong. The moment they arrived on the island, things started to spiral out of control. Jonah was the first to notice something wasn't right. He was a man who had spent his life in the wild, someone who knew the land as well as he knew his own skin. But even he couldn't explain what was happening here. The air felt too thick, as if it was alive, buzzing with an energy that unsettled him to his core. The plants, oddly lush, yet seemingly out of place with the environment, were growing in unnatural patterns. Even the animals, which had initially seemed skittish and cautious, appeared to be unafraid of the humans, walking freely around them as if they were no different from the land itself. Jonah's instincts kicked in, warning him that they weren't alone. But when he voiced his concerns, Raj dismissed him, suggesting that it was the isolation playing tricks on them. But Jonah couldn't shake the feeling. Something was wrong, deeply wrong. As they ventured deeper into the island, they began to find evidence of strange structures hidden beneath the thick canopy. At first glance, they looked like ruins, ancient perhaps. But the more they investigated, the more it became apparent that these were no ordinary remains of long-forgotten civilizations. The architecture was unlike anything they had ever seen. It was as if the structures were crafted not just with human hands, but with some unnatural force, built to withstand time, to resist decay, and to blend seamlessly with the natural world around them. Each stone, each wall, seemed to pulse with energy, vibrating subtly as though it were alive. The team was no longer just exploring an island. They were exploring an enigma, one that promised answers, yes, but at a cost. Maya, the environmental scientist, was the first to make the connection. As she analyzed the plants and the soil, she discovered that the ecosystem was unlike any other she had studied. The plants didn't just grow, they healed. It was almost as if the land itself was regenerating, reviving itself in ways that defied biology. Some of the plant life seemed to have properties that could extend human life, halt the aging process, and even regenerate tissue. Maya was astounded, but also frightened. She realized that this was more than a mere anomaly. It was a living organism in its own right, with properties far beyond what humanity had ever achieved. And whoever or whatever was responsible for the island state was not just playing God with nature, they were shaping it. But it wasn't just the island biology that left them unsettled. As they pushed forward, deeper into the heart of the island, they found something that made even the toughest of the group hesitate. It was a series of carvings, etched into the very rock face of a cliffside, symbols that no one could decipher, yet seemed eerily familiar. They were almost mathematical, their precision uncanny, but it was the pattern that got to them. It was as though the symbols were part of a language, a code, one that tied directly into the very fabric of human consciousness. As Raj, the communications expert, examined them, he realized something terrifying. The symbols were not just instructions, they were warnings. Don't go further. Stay away. It was too late. As soon as they made contact with the symbols, the ground seemed to rumble beneath their feet. The sky darkened, and a strange, oppressive silence enveloped the island. It was then that they first saw him, the figure from the drone footage. But this time, he was no longer a silhouette. He was standing in the clearing, watching them with an unnerving calm. He wasn't alone. Behind him stood something far more horrifying. An entire army of figures, their faces obscured, their movements synchronized in a way that felt wrong. These weren't humans, not in any sense that the team could comprehend. They called out to him, tried to communicate, but the figure remained silent, unmoving. The team knew they had to leave, but the island had other plans. The moment they turned back to retreat, the environment shifted. The trees seemed to close in around them. The air became thick and unbreathable, and the path they had once walked seemed to vanish. No one could understand how or why it was happening, but they were trapped. Jonah tried to lead them back to the coast, but every turn they made took them deeper into the island's heart, further away from safety. Panic began to set in. The team had to come to terms with the terrifying possibility that they were not just lost in the wilderness. They were caught in a living, breathing trap, a place that wanted them there, a place that had been waiting for them. But why? What had they uncovered? And what was the figure trying to protect? As the night stretched on, the tension between the researchers began to escalate. Raj argued that they needed to break the code of the symbols, that they needed to understand why they were being targeted. Maya, ever the scientist, pushed for a more logical approach. Document everything, gather data, and leave. Jonah, on the other hand, believed that they had uncovered something much bigger than a simple scientific discovery. The more they delved into the island's mysteries, the more they realized it wasn't just an island. It was a vault, containing secrets that no one was meant to know. But the most unsettling question remained. Who was the figure? What was he? And why had he been waiting all this time? Was he truly human, or something else entirely? And if he was human, how had he survived all this time? Cut off from the world, untouched by civilization? There was only one way to find out. But that answer would cost them more than they ever imagined. As the team tried to make sense of everything, the unthinkable happened. One by one, they began to disappear. Not in a conventional sense, either. They didn't run. They didn't scream. They just faded. Their bodies were still there, but their minds were gone, as if they had been taken by something far greater than mere human understanding. It was as if the island itself was feeding on them, consuming their very essence. And that's when the figure approached them, slowly, deliberately, and he spoke. The words were impossible to understand at first. They didn't seem to come from his mouth, but from somewhere deeper, as if they were being transmitted directly into their minds. "You're not supposed to know this," he said. "You weren't meant to come here." But it was too late. The truth was already unraveling. And the real horror? The truth wasn't just about the island. It was about us. The figure's voice reverberated through the thick air, a deep, unsettling tone that seemed to bypass their ears and directly penetrate their minds. "You weren't meant to come here." The words were simple, yet they carried the weight of 1,000 years of secrecy, a warning drenched in ominous intent. The team stood frozen, caught in the web of his gaze, their limbs as if shackled by invisible chains. There was something about him, something in his eyes, that suggested he was both ancient and ageless, a creature not bound by the limitations of time or space. The moment his presence fully settled into their consciousness, a wave of terror washed over them, not because of what they saw, but because of what they felt. It was as if the very land around them was alive, listening, watching, and waiting. They had come to uncover a mystery, but now they were facing something much worse than they could have ever imagined. They had trespassed into a forbidden realm, a place where knowledge came at a steep price. The figure, unmoving and unblinking, continued, but his next words felt like a dagger to their hearts. "This island, it was never meant to be found, but you have unlocked what should remain sealed forever." His voice grew softer, more ethereal, as though the air itself was bending to carry his words. "Now the island knows you, and it will never let you leave." A chill ran down their spines. Jonah clenched his fists, trying to shake off the paralysis that gripped him. He was a man who had seen the worst of nature, storms, wild animals, and the unforgiving terrain of the wilderness. But this was something entirely different. This was unnatural. There was no weather to fight against, no creatures to track. The danger wasn't physical. It was primal, something embedded deep within the very fabric of existence. Maya, the scientist, tried to rationalize it, as she always did. What do you mean? Unlock? This island. It's just an island, right? We're not the first to discover it. She barely recognized her own voice, trembling, uncertain. But the figure only smiled, a cruel, knowing smile that did not reach his eyes. You are the first, Maya. You are the first to wake it, and you will not be the last. The words seemed to hang in the air like poison, sinking deep into their bones. The ground beneath their feet trembled, as if responding to his words, and the trees around them creaked with an unnatural groan. It was then that they realized that the island itself wasn't just a place. It was alive. Alive in ways they could never have conceived, with a consciousness, a will of its own, an entity that had been waiting for the right moment, for the right people, to come and unearth its hidden truths. Raj, who had been quietly studying the strange symbols etched into the rock face, looked up, his face pale. He had been deciphering them, trying to piece together their meaning, when suddenly he understood. The symbols weren't just ancient warnings. They were instructions. Instructions on how to harness the island's power. And with that realization came a new understanding. This was no ordinary power. It wasn't something any one person could control. It was vast, unfathomable, and it fed. Wait, you're saying the island, it feeds off of us. Raj's voice shook as he turned to the figure. That's why people disappear. That's why. The figure nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. Yes, it devours those who are drawn to it. And once it has tasted you, it will never let you go. The team exchanged nervous glances, each of them starting to piece together the nightmare they had found themselves in. They weren't just trespassers. They were prey. The island wasn't merely hiding secrets. It was feeding off those secrets, drawing power from every person who tried to uncover its truth. Jonah's voice broke the silence, urgent, commanding. We need to leave. Now. We can't stay here any longer. But his words fell on deaf ears as the island seemed to close in around them, its very atmosphere thickening, suffocating them with an unseen weight. And then it happened. The ground beneath them cracked open, splitting like the jaws of a great beast. The island groaned as if it were in pain, and from the depths of the earth, strange, glowing tendrils began to emerge. They slithered and writhed like serpents, reaching for the team with terrifying precision, moving faster than they could react. The team scattered in a blind panic, but the tendrils were too quick. They grabbed at Maya first, pulling her toward the chasm, her screams echoing through the air. Maya fought, but the tendrils were relentless, pulling her deeper into the island's core, into the very bowels of its mysterious power. Jonah and Raj lunged forward to help her, but the tendrils snapped at them like angry vipers, blocking their every move. They had no choice but to retreat, scrambling up the rocky cliffs, desperate to escape the island's grasp. But even as they ran, the island's power seemed to grow stronger. The trees began to bend in unnatural ways, their roots tearing from the earth, reaching for the team. The sky above them darkened, swirling with ominous clouds, and the air grew thick, suffocating, as though the very atmosphere had turned against them. Jonah's heart pounded in his chest, and he could feel the island's pulse beneath his feet, its power vibrating through the ground. As they reached the edge of the island, the ocean beyond seemed impossibly far away, the waters churning violently as though they, too, were caught in the island's grip. Jonah glanced back, his stomach sinking as he saw the figure standing at the heart of the island, unmoving, his eyes locked onto them with a cold, calculating gaze. And then, as if it had been waiting for them to reach this point, the island spoke. Or perhaps it was a figure, using the island's voice, but it came from everywhere and nowhere at once. Leaving, the voice echoed, cold and hollow. You could not leave. You never could. The ground trembled once again, but this time it was different. It was as if the island itself were rearranging, shifting, creating an impenetrable barrier between them and the world beyond. Jonah and Raj turned to each other, realizing too late that they were trapped, that they had never been meant to leave. The island had taken its toll, and now it was closing in. But that's when the unexpected happened. A roar echoed from the distance, loud, thunderous, and unmistakable. At first, they thought it was the island itself, some new manifestation of its power, but as the sound grew louder, they realized it was something else entirely. A figure emerged from the jungle, a towering silhouette that seemed to blur the line between man and machine. It was massive, armored in what appeared to be some kind of exoskeleton, and it moved with an unnatural speed and precision. It was the last thing they expected to see. The figure wasn't human, not in any conventional sense. It was a hybrid, a fusion of man and technology, and it seemed to be moving in perfect harmony with the island, as if it were part of it. It was as if the island had summoned it, or perhaps the island itself had become it. And as it moved toward the team, its eyes glowed with an eerie, cold light, locked onto them. But this wasn't a savior. This wasn't a protector. The hybrid was no ally. It was another piece of the island's vast, unknowable puzzle, and it wasn't here to help them escape. It was here to make sure they never did. In that moment, as the towering hybrid advanced on them, Jonah realized something that made his blood run cold. The island wasn't just feeding on them. It was using them to create something much worse. What they had stumbled upon wasn't just an island. It was a breeding ground for an entirely new form of life, one that blended human, nature, and machine in a way that defied logic and humanity. The hybrid before them was the first of many, and they were next. "Run!" Jonah screamed, but it was already too late. The hybrid lunged, and with it came a surge of dark energy, a shockwave of power that threw them both off their feet. As they scrambled to their feet, the island's tendrils rose once more, this time faster, angrier. They had come for them. But now, the island itself had a new purpose. It had evolved. It had adapted. And there was no turning back. As the hybrid loomed above them, its eyes glowing brighter with each passing second, Jonah realized that the only way out was to fight, and that was the one thing they weren't prepared for. The hybrid loomed over Jonah and Raj, its eerie glowing eyes filled with cold, mechanical malice. Its every movement seemed precise, deliberate, as though it were calculating their every escape attempt before they even made it. The tendrils of the island swirled like an unholy storm around them, relentless in their pursuit. With each passing moment, the ground beneath their feet seemed to quake, with increasing violence, as if the very core of the island was alive with wrath. Jonah's heart raced, his mind a frenzy of thoughts. But no matter how fast his adrenaline surged, he knew that escape wasn't just improbable, it was impossible. The hybrid shadow stretched long across the island's war-torn landscape, a reminder of the terrible force they were up against. There was no way around it. There was no negotiation. They could run, they could fight, but they were on borrowed time. Jonah, Raj gasped, looking back at the monstrous hybrid. There's no way out. It's designed for this. Whatever this thing is, whatever it represents, it's not human. It's part of the island itself, a product of whatever it's been hiding for centuries. Jonah's chest tightened. Raj was right. The island hadn't just been hiding its power. It had been creating it. And in that moment, Jonah's worst fears materialized into something far worse than he had ever imagined. The hybrid wasn't just an unfeeling weapon. It was part of the island's ongoing evolution, a hybrid of human, nature, and machine, merging to form something monstrous, something that could continue to grow, adapt, and evolve for centuries to come. Then we end this. Jonah said, his voice a whispered defiance, even as fear clawed at him. He had no idea how, but he couldn't back down now. This was their only chance to stop it. They had to uncover what the island truly was, and they had to do it before the hybrid destroyed them completely. But just as Jonah opened his mouth to shout a command, something unexpected happened. The hybrid froze in its tracks. Its glowing eyes flickered for a split second, almost as if it were malfunctioning. The tendrils slowed their advance, the earth beneath their feet stilling as if the island itself had paused for breath. It was a momentary lapse, a brief crack in the island's relentless pressure, but it was enough. Jonah, sensing an opportunity, grabbed Raj's arm and pulled him toward the cliff's edge. "We need to move now." Jonah's words were frantic, filled with sudden, raw energy that matched the urgency in his heart. But before they could make a break for it, a voice cut through the air, its resonance vibrating in the very air around them. "You think you can escape?" The voice wasn't the hybrids. It wasn't the islands. It was something else, something deep within the island itself. The voice was ancient, speaking words in a language Jonah couldn't understand, but the tone was unmistakably familiar. It was the same presence they had felt when they first set foot on the island, the same strange force that had drawn them here in the first place. It wasn't just the island they were dealing with. It was its mind. Jonah and Raj stood frozen as the island's voice boomed again, this time clearer, more powerful. You are a part of it now. You belong to me. You woke me, and now you shall remain. Jonah gritted his teeth. There was no time for philosophical debates. No, he yelled, with more certainty than he had ever felt before. We're not part of you. You've been feeding on us, but you don't own us. The hybrid's mechanical face shifted into something resembling a grin, though it was all wrong, a jagged twist of metal and malice. The ground trembled beneath them once again, and the island's voice grew even louder, as the entire landscape was trying to crush them under the weight of its presence. I will consume you all. You cannot fight me. You cannot escape me. You are nothing compared to what I have become. But in the depths of Jonah's mind, a flicker of understanding sparked. He wasn't sure how he knew, but something deep inside told him that the island wasn't just a living entity. It was a prisoner, too. It had been confined for centuries, a creature trapped in a cycle of feeding and evolving, bound to an ancient power that it could never fully control. Its hunger, its insatiable desire for more, had been its downfall, and now it was using everything at its disposal to feed again. Jonah glanced at Raj, his mind racing. The exoskeletons. The hybrids, they're not just weapons. They're part of the process. They're clones, and if we can stop the cycle, we can stop it from feeding on us. Raj's eyes widened in realization. You mean, if we destroy the hybrids, we can cut the connection? Break the cycle? Jonah nodded. Exactly. If we destroy the source, the island will lose its power. But as soon as the words left his mouth, the ground beneath them split again, and the hybrids surged forward, moving faster than they thought possible. Jonah and Raj barely had time to react, as the massive figure lunged at them with terrifying force. But this time, the hybrid didn't just aim to attack. It opened its chest, revealing a dark, pulsating core, something far more advanced than human technology, a strange fusion of organic matter and glowing energy. Without hesitation, Jonah sprinted toward it. He had no weapon, no armor, no plan, but he had one thing the island didn't, the will to fight. He reached the hybrid just as it swung a massive fist at him, but instead of retreating, Jonah dove toward the core, his fingers brushing the glowing surface. It was hot, almost painfully so, but he pushed through the pain, reaching deeper into the heart of the machine. And then, with one final, desperate push, Jonah did what no one thought possible. He ripped the core from the hybrid's chest. The entire island seemed to shudder in response, the earth trembling violently as if it were waking from a deep, painful slumber. The hybrid let out a guttural cry before collapsing, its massive form crumpling to the ground as its glowing eyes dimmed. But the island was not done yet. As Jonah held the core in his hand, he could feel its pulse, feel the life force of the island itself within it. It was alive, but it wasn't beyond saving. Jonah knew what he had to do. He couldn't just destroy it. He couldn't erase what had been created here. But he could stop it from continuing. He could sever the cycle once and for all. With one final, defiant roar, Jonah slammed the core into ground, watching as the energy rippled outward, tearing through the island like a chain reaction. The trees began to fall, the earth crumbled beneath their feet, and the tendrils of the island recoiled as if in pain. The hybrid collapsed, its energy fading into the abyss. And then, in an instant, everything stopped. The sky cleared, the air grew still, and the ground beneath their feet ceased to tremble. The island was no longer alive. It was silent. Jonah and Raj stood, panting, battered but alive. The island, the creature, the hybrid, everything had vanished into nothingness, as if it had never existed at all. But there was no time for relief. They still had to escape. They ran toward the shore, where the wreckage of their boat had washed up, and as they fought their way through the dense jungle, Jonah couldn't help but wonder if they had truly destroyed the island, or if it had simply retreated into the depths, waiting for the next unwitting soul to awaken it. With one final glance back, Jonah stepped onto the boat. The horizon stretched before them, vast, empty, and uncertain. They had won. But the true nature of the island, of the hybrid, of the force they had unleashed, it was still out there, somewhere, waiting. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories of inner strength and resilience. Until next time, stay strong, stay brave, and never forget your worth.